She stood in the lobby of the building she had walked into every single morning for 3 years. Her cardboard box was in her arms, her ID badge had already been deactivated, and through the glass walls of the conference room on the second floor, she could see them. Her former co-workers. Some of them were smiling. One of them was laughing. Not the kind of laugh that comes from a joke someone told. The kind of laugh that comes when people think someone got exactly what they deserved. She felt her throat tighten. Her eyes burned. But she did not cry. She shifted the box to one hip, pushed through the revolving door, and stepped into the cold January air of downtown Philadelphia. She had no job. No savings worth mentioning. No backup plan. And she was 6,000 miles away from the place she once called home, but she made herself a quiet promise on that sidewalk, a promise she would keep in a way that nobody in that building could have ever imagined. Before we go deeper, let us know in the comments where you are watching from. We would love to hear from you. And if you are new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Her name was Amara Osei. She was born in Accra, Ghana, the second of 4 children raised by a single mother who sold fabrics at Makola Market. If you have ever been to Makola, you know it is loud, it is crowded, and it is unforgiving. You learn to negotiate before you learn to read. You learn to stand your ground before you learn to tie your shoes. Amara's mother, a woman named Efua, used to wake up at 4 in the morning to arrange her stall. She would iron each piece of cloth the night before and fold them with the precision of someone who understood that presentation was everything. Amara would sometimes sit beside her after school, watching how her mother handled customers. How she smiled even when they insulted her prices. How she always found a way to close a deal without making the other person feel like they had lost. Efua never went to university. She could barely write her own name. But she understood people in a way that most business school graduates never will. And she passed every single one of those instincts down to her daughter. Amara was brilliant in school. Not the kind of brilliant that teachers brag about at staff meetings, but the kind that shows up quietly, consistently, and without drama. She finished near the top of her class at the University of Ghana with a degree in marketing. But like so many young Africans with ambition that outgrew their geography, she knew that staying in Accra would mean accepting a ceiling that she was not willing to live under. So in 2016, at the age of 26, she applied for a graduate program at a mid-tier university in Pennsylvania. She got in. Her mother sold an extra parcel of land that had been in the family for decades to pay for the first year of tuition. When Amara boarded that flight at Kotoka International Airport, Efua held her face with both hands and said something that Amara would never forget. She said, "The world will try to make you small. Do not let it. You are not small." Amara nodded, but she did not fully understand what her mother meant. Not yet. That understanding would come later, in a conference room in Philadelphia, in front of people who thought she was nothing. Graduate school was hard. Not just academically, but socially and financially. Amara worked 2 part-time jobs while carrying a full course load. She cleaned offices 3 nights a week and tutored undergraduate students on weekends. She ate rice and beans for dinner so often that the smell of it still makes her stomach turn to this day. She had no car, no credit history, and no family nearby. There were nights when she sat alone in her studio apartment and wondered if she had made the right decision. There were mornings when she woke up and could not remember why she was doing any of it. But then she would think of her mother standing at that market stall at 4 in the morning, pressing fabric with a coal iron, and she would get up and keep going. That is what people from where Amara comes from do. They keep going. Not because they are superhuman. But because going back is not an option they are willing to accept. She graduated in 2018 with a master's degree in integrated marketing communications. Her GPA was a 3.8. She had done a capstone project that her professor called one of the best strategic analyses he had seen in 12 years of teaching. She was ready. She was qualified. She was hungry. And she walked straight into a job market that did not know what to do with her. Amara sent out over 140 applications in 3 months. She got 11 callbacks. She went to 9 interviews. And she received one offer. One. It came from a mid-sized marketing and branding firm in downtown Philadelphia called Pinnacle Strategy Group. They offered her an associate strategist position at a salary that was $15,000 below the market average for someone with her qualifications. She knew it was low. She knew they were underpaying her. But she also knew that she needed a work visa, and Pinnacle was willing to sponsor one. So she took the job, and she told herself she would prove her worth and negotiate later. Let me pause here and ask you something. Have you ever been in a position where you knew you deserved more, but you took what was offered because you had no other choice? Have you ever swallowed your pride because the alternative was worse? If you have, then you already understand the quiet frustration that Amara carried into that office every single day. She was grateful for the opportunity, yes. But gratitude and dignity do not always sit comfortably in the same room. Pinnacle Strategy Group had about 60 employees. The office was in a renovated building on Market Street, all exposed brick and open floor plans designed to look creative and progressive. But the culture inside was the kind you see in companies that talk a lot about diversity in their brochures but do very little about it in their hallways. Amara was one of 3 black employees in the entire company. She was the only African. And from her very first week, she noticed things. Small things that most people would dismiss. The way conversations would stop when she walked into the break room. The way her ideas in meetings would be met with polite silence, only to be repeated by someone else 10 minutes later and met with enthusiasm. The way her manager, a man named Greg Halderman, would CC her on emails that were clearly meant to remind her of her place in the hierarchy. Greg was not a bad person in the traditional sense. He did not yell. He did not use slurs. He was the kind of manager who smiled while he undermined you, the kind who gave you just enough rope to feel like you were climbing while he quietly held the other end. But Amara did not complain. She put her head down and worked. In her first year, she helped land 3 new accounts for the firm. One of them was a regional healthcare chain that brought in over $200,000 in annual billing. She wrote the pitch deck. She built the strategy. She presented it to the client. And when the deal closed, Greg stood up in the team meeting and thanked the whole team for their effort. He did not mention Amara's name once. She sat in her chair, smiled, and said nothing. That night, she went home and cried in her bathroom for 20 minutes. Then she washed her face, made herself tea, and opened her laptop to start working on the next pitch. By her second year, Amara had become one of the most productive members of the strategy team. Internal metrics showed that her accounts had the highest client retention rate in the department. She had a way with clients that nobody else at Pinnacle could replicate. She listened. She remembered details. She followed up not because it was in her task list, but because she genuinely cared. Clients loved her. One of them, the CEO of a regional logistics company, once told Greg directly that Amara was the reason they had stayed with Pinnacle. Greg nodded, smiled, and changed the subject. That is the thing about people like Greg. They do not want to destroy you outright. They just want to make sure you never rise high enough to make them feel threatened. In her third year, something shifted. Pinnacle brought on a new VP of operations named Laura Chen. Laura was sharp, ambitious, and politically savvy. She and Greg had history. They had worked together at another firm years earlier, and there was an unspoken alliance between them that everyone in the office could feel but nobody dared to name. Laura began restructuring teams. She moved people around. She created new reporting lines. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, Amara found herself being pushed to the margins. Her client accounts were reassigned. Her input in strategy meetings was no longer requested. She was moved from the main floor to a smaller office near the supply closet on the 3rd floor. When she asked Greg about it, he told her it was just a space optimization decision and that she should not read too much into it. Now, I want you to think about this for a moment. Imagine working somewhere for 3 years. Imagine giving everything you have, your time, your ideas, your energy, your weekends. Imagine watching other people take credit for your work and saying nothing because you were afraid that speaking up would cost you the one thing keeping you in the country. Imagine being moved to a smaller office and being told not to read into it. How would that make you feel? What would you do? Amara started documenting everything. Not because she was planning a lawsuit, but because she had learned from her mother that when people try to erase you, the most powerful thing you can do is keep a record of your own existence. She saved emails. She kept notes from meetings. She tracked every account she had worked on, every client she had brought in, every dollar she had generated for the firm. She did not know when she would need any of it. But she knew she would. The firing came on a Tuesday in January. It was bitter cold that morning, the kind of Philadelphia winter cold that cuts through every layer you put on and settles deep into your joints. Amara was called into a conference room on the second floor at 9:15 in the morning. Greg was there. Laura was there. A woman from HR whose name Amara had never learned was sitting at the end of the table with a manila folder. They told her that due to organizational restructuring, her position was being eliminated. They thanked her for her contributions. They offered her 2 weeks of severance and told her that her health insurance would continue through the end of the month. The entire conversation lasted less than 8 minutes. 8 minutes to erase 3 years. Amara asked one question. She asked if this decision was based on her performance. The HR woman looked at Greg. Greg looked at the table. Nobody answered. That silence told her everything she needed to know. She packed her things quietly. She did not make a scene. She did not argue. She placed her laptop on her desk. She unpinned the photo of her mother from her cubicle wall. She put her coffee mug, her notebooks, and her small potted succulent into a cardboard box. And as she walked through the office toward the elevator, she could feel it. The stairs. The whispers. And when she passed the glass conference room on the second floor, she saw Greg, Laura, and 2 other colleagues standing inside, and one of them, a man named Derek who had once asked her to proofread his emails because he could not spell the word strategy, was laughing. Not a subtle laugh. A full, open, teeth-showing laugh. She does not know what the joke was. Maybe it was not even about her. But in that moment, standing in that lobby with a cardboard box and a deactivated badge, it felt like it was. The next few months were the hardest of Amara's life. Her work visa was tied to Pinnacle, which meant she had 60 days to find a new employer willing to sponsor her, or she would have to leave the country. She applied to every firm she could find. She reached out to former clients. She called contacts from grad school. Most of them were sympathetic but unhelpful. "We love you, Amara, but we are not set up to sponsor visas right now." She heard that sentence so many times it started to feel like a wall built specifically to keep her out. During this time, her mother called her every other day from Accra. Efua did not fully understand the visa system, but she understood fear when she heard it in her daughter's voice. One evening, Amara broke down on the phone. She told her mother she was thinking about coming home. That maybe this country was not for her. That maybe she had been foolish to think she could make it here. Efua was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Amara, do you remember what I told you at the airport?" Amara said yes. "Then why are you letting them make you small?" That conversation changed something in Amara. Not dramatically, not like in the movies. But something quiet and deep shifted inside her chest. She wiped her face. She opened her laptop. And she started doing something she had been afraid to do for years. She started building something of her own. Amara had saved every strategy template, every framework, and every process document she had ever created during her career, not Pinnacle's proprietary materials, but her own intellectual work, things she had developed on her own time, things she had brought to the firm, not things the firm had given her. She knew marketing. She knew branding. She knew client relations. And more importantly, she knew what it felt like to be underestimated. She decided to start a consulting firm. She called it Baobab Strategies, named after the tree that grows in the dry savannas of Africa, the tree that can survive anything, the tree that stores water inside itself during droughts so that it can keep living when everything around it is dying. She filed the paperwork. She set up a website using a free template. She printed business cards at the public library. And she reached out to the one person she thought might give her a chance. His name was Martin Calloway. He was the CEO of Calloway Logistics, the same regional logistics company whose account Amara had managed at Pinnacle. Martin had always liked Amara. He respected her work. He had once told Greg directly that Amara was the reason his company stayed with the firm. So when Amara called him and told him what had happened, Martin was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I always thought they did not appreciate you over there." He asked her what she was doing now. She told him about Baobab Strategies. He asked her what she could do for his company that Pinnacle was not already doing. And Amara, drawing on everything her mother had taught her about negotiation and everything she had learned in 3 years of corporate marketing, gave him a 30-minute pitch over the phone that was so specific, so tailored, and so clearly rooted in a genuine understanding of his business that Martin interrupted her halfway through and said, "Send me a proposal." She sent the proposal that night. Martin signed it within a week. It was a small contract, just $25,000 for a 6-month brand repositioning project. But it was enough. It was enough to give her business legitimacy. It was enough to help her apply for a different visa category. And it was enough to keep her in the country. She also found an immigration attorney who helped her transition to an O-1 visa, which is reserved for individuals with extraordinary ability or achievement. The application included letters from 3 former clients, her published capstone thesis, and documentation of the revenue she had generated at Pinnacle. It was approved 4 months later. Now I need you to understand something about what happened next, because it did not happen overnight. There was no montage. There was no magical phone call that changed everything in an instant. What happened was slow, steady, and grueling. Amara worked 16-hour days from her apartment in West Philadelphia. She had no team. She was the strategist, the designer, the accountant, and the customer service department all at once. She ate meals at her desk. She took client calls from her bathroom because the acoustics were better. She learned how to use design software by watching YouTube tutorials at 2 in the morning. She made mistakes. She underpriced projects. She over-delivered on some contracts and barely broke even. But she kept going. And slowly, month by month, her reputation began to grow. Martin Calloway referred her to 2 other business owners. One of them was in the healthcare space, and the other ran a chain of boutique hotels across the Mid-Atlantic region. Both of them signed contracts with Baobab Strategies within 3 months. Amara delivered results that were measurable and specific. She did not just create logos and taglines. She built comprehensive brand strategies that tied directly to revenue growth. She tracked metrics. She showed clients exactly how her work was affecting their bottom line. And in a world full of marketing firms that promised the moon and deliver a pamphlet, that level of accountability made her stand out. By the end of her first full year in business, Baobab Strategies had 7 clients and had generated just over $300,000 in revenue. Amara hired her first employee, a young woman named Jessica who had just graduated from Temple University with a degree in communications. Jessica was talented, hardworking, and eager to prove herself, and she reminded Amara of someone she used to be. Amara paid Jessica fairly. She gave her credit in client meetings. She made sure Jessica knew that her contributions mattered. Because Amara remembered what it felt like when nobody did that for her. By the end of year 2, Baobab had 14 clients, 3 full-time employees, and a small office space in the Rittenhouse Square area of Philadelphia. Amara had been featured in a local business journal as one of the city's rising entrepreneurs. She had been invited to speak at a marketing conference in Atlanta. And she had started mentoring young African immigrants who were trying to break into the corporate world. She told them the same thing her mother told her. Do not let them make you small. She also sent money home to Accra every month. She had helped her mother expand her fabric business and hire 2 assistants. Fua no longer had to wake up at 4 in the morning. She still did sometimes, out of habit, but she no longer had to. And then came the phone call that Amara never expected. It was a Thursday afternoon in March, roughly 2.5 years after she had been fired from Pinnacle Strategy Group. Her phone rang. The caller ID showed a number she did not recognize. She answered. The voice on the other end was professional, polite, and slightly nervous. It was the new head of client services at Pinnacle. His name was Tom Driscoll. He told Amara that one of Pinnacle's largest clients, a national retail brand with locations in 12 states, was looking for a partner firm to lead a major rebranding initiative. The project was worth over $1.2 million. The client had reviewed several firms and had specifically requested to work with Baobab Strategies. Tom was calling to see if Amara would be interested in partnering with Pinnacle on the project. Amara was quiet for a long time. So long that Tom asked if she was still on the line. She said yes. She asked Tom how the client had heard about Baobab. Tom hesitated, then admitted that the client's CMO had seen Amara's presentation at the Atlanta conference and had been following her work ever since. The CMO had told Pinnacle directly that any proposal for the rebranding project would need to include Baobab Strategies, or the deal was off. In other words, Pinnacle needed Amara. Not the other way around. Think about that for a moment. The company that fired her. The company where people laughed as she walked out with a cardboard box. That company was now calling her because their biggest potential client would not work with them unless she was involved. If you were in Amara's position right now, what would you do? Would you take the call? Would you hang up? Would you laugh? Would you cry? Take a second and really think about it, because what Amara did next says everything about the kind of person she is. She told Tom she would review the opportunity and get back to him within 48 hours. She did not gloat. She did not bring up the past. She did not ask about Greg or Laura. She simply treated it like what it was, a business decision. And after thinking about it carefully, after talking to her team, after running the numbers, she agreed to take the project. But she had conditions. Baobab would be the lead strategic partner on the account. Baobab's name would appear first on all client-facing materials. And Amara would be the primary point of contact for the client. Pinnacle would handle execution and production, but the strategy would come from Baobab. Tom agreed to every condition. The project launched in June of that year. It ran for 10 months. And it was, by every measurable standard, a massive success. The client's brand awareness increased by 31% in their target markets. Customer acquisition costs dropped by 18%. Revenue at newly rebranded locations grew by 22% in the first quarter after launch. The client was thrilled. They renewed their contract and expanded it. And for the first time in Pinnacle's history, a significant portion of their revenue was flowing through a firm run by someone they had once discarded. Amara walked into Pinnacle's office exactly once during the project, for a joint strategy meeting with the client. She wore a navy blue suit. Her hair was styled in the same braids she had worn the day she was fired. She carried a leather portfolio instead of a cardboard box. And when she walked through that lobby on Market Street, past the same revolving door, past the same glass conference rooms, nobody was laughing. Greg Halderman was no longer with the firm. He had been quietly let go 6 months earlier for reasons that were never made fully public. Laura Chen had transferred to a different division. Derek, the man who could not spell strategy, was still there. He was sitting at his desk when Amara walked by. He looked up. Their eyes met. He looked away first. Amara did not say anything to him. She did not need to. Some things do not require words. Today, Baobab Strategies has over 30 clients, a team of 12 full-time employees, and offices in Philadelphia and Atlanta. Amara has been featured in Forbes, Entrepreneur magazine, and Black Enterprise. She has spoken at conferences across the country. She serves on the advisory board of 2 nonprofit organizations that support immigrant entrepreneurs. And every year, she flies back to Accra to spend 2 weeks with her mother. They sit together at the market, just like they used to, and Efua still gives her advice about how to handle difficult customers. Some things never change. And some things should not. But here is what I want you to take away from this story. It is not about revenge. Amara does not see it that way, and neither should you. It is about something much more important than that. It is about what happens when someone underestimates you so completely that they do not even bother to watch what you do next. It is about the quiet power of a person who refuses to be defined by the worst thing that ever happened to them. It is about a woman who was 6,000 miles from home, who lost her job, who almost lost her right to stay in the country, and who built something extraordinary not because she wanted to prove them wrong, but because she believed in herself even when nobody else did. Amara once said in an interview that the moment she stood in that lobby with the cardboard box was the most important moment of her life. Not because it was the worst moment, although it was. But because it was the moment she decided who she was going to be. She said, "They thought firing me was the end of my story. They did not understand that where I come from, we do not end. We begin again." I want you to think about your own life right now. Think about the moments when someone counted you out. Think about the rooms where people looked at you and decided you were not enough. Think about the times you were passed over, ignored, underestimated, or dismissed. And I want you to ask yourself one question. What did you do next? Because that is the only thing that matters. Not what they did to you. Not what they said about you. Not what they thought of you. What did you do next? Amara's mother Efua was right. The world will try to make you small. People will try to put you in a box that is easier for them to manage. They will smile while they do it. They will call it restructuring. They will call it optimization. They will call it business. But you do not have to accept their definition of who you are. You get to write your own story. Amara did. And she wrote it so loudly that the people who threw her away had to come back and ask for her help. There is a proverb in Ghana that says, "The one who plants a tree knowing they will never sit in its shade has at least begun to understand the meaning of life." Efua planted a tree when she sold that land to send her daughter to America. She did not know what would grow from it. She just knew her daughter was worth the investment. And Amara planted a tree when she started Baobab Strategies from a studio apartment with no money, no team, and no guarantee that any of it would work. She did not know what would grow from it either. But she planted it anyway. And now that tree provides shade for dozens of people, employees, clients, ments, and a mother in Accra who no longer has to wake up at 4 in the morning unless she wants to. So the next time someone laughs when you fall, remember Amara Osei. Remember the woman with the cardboard box who became the biggest client of the company that fired her. Remember that the people who dismiss you today might need you tomorrow. And remember that your story is not over just because someone else decided to close the chapter. You hold the pen. You always have. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Someone who is going through a hard time. Someone who has been told they are not enough. Someone who is standing in their own lobby right now, holding their own cardboard box, wondering what comes next. Tell them what comes next is up to them. And tell them to make it extraordinary. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next one.